are you, or maybe a family, navigating challenges like anxiety or difficulty focusing, maybe other mental health hurdles, particularly with kids?
Yeah.
And are you kind of wondering if there might be different answers out there, maybe, beyond the usual paths?
It's so common to feel that way, isn't it? I mean, the standard approaches, they don't always get to the heart of it for everyone. It can be really frustrating trying to find what actually helps.
Absolutely. And well, that's exactly why we're jumping into a deep dive today. We're looking at mental wellness from some really fresh perspectives, exploring approaches that really tap into the body's own ability to find balance and heal, offering potential new routes, especially for young people.
Yeah, we've been digging through a lot of notes, research, exploring these maybe less conventional ideas and therapies.
And our goal here is really just to unpack what we found, see what these potential new paths could mean for helping kids, well, really anyone, thrive. Okay, let's unpack this.
So I think a really fundamental idea in a lot of the material we looked at is this. What if what we call mental health issues aren't just happening in the mind?
Right.
What if they have physical roots too?
Yeah, it's like trying to figure out why a car isn't running right. I mean, sometimes it's about how you're driving, sure, but often the problem's actually under the hood, right?
Exactly.
The engine, the fuel. Our sources are suggesting we really need to look closely at the body's inner workings.
Precisely. And one really fascinating area that does this is called bioregulatory medicine. Think of it less like fixing a single broken part.
Okay.
And more like tending to the whole terrain.
Yeah.
The whole environment inside the body. It looks at everything. The physical stuff, yes, but also emotions, even the body's energy.
And a big focus there is some sort of drainage, right? I saw that mentioned.
Yes, drainage. It's basically about supporting the body's natural ability to, clear things out. Like making sure the pipes are clean so everything can flow smoothly, helping those natural detox pathways work well. And what's interesting, especially thinking about kids, is that the material points out why these sort of gentler methods like homeopathy and drainage remedies often seem pretty effective for them, even for pets, actually.
Huh. Why is that?
Well, the idea is that kids just haven't built up as much, let's say, toxic load or, deep-seated physical imbalances over the years like adults might have.
Right. Less accumulated baggage for the body to deal with. Makes sense. And we also saw something about isopathic remedies.
Right. Yeah. Isopathics. These are designed to help bring balance to the microbiome, basically. The tiny living things inside us, bacteria, fungi, all that.
Okay.
It's all part of optimizing that inner terrain. And again, because kids' systems are younger, often more resilient, they might rebalance quicker than an adult who's had years of maybe chronic inflammation or oxidative stress building up.
Yeah, that really clicks when you hear stories like the one from the doctor who shared her own journey. She started looking for totally different solutions when her son had chronic eczema and ear infections that just weren't getting better with standard stuff. And that led her down this whole alternative path.
Exactly. And we read about a really powerful example. A 21-month-old boy, nonverbal.
Wow.
After a very, very gentle detoxification process focused on mercury exposure, which they linked back to his mom's exposure during pregnancy, he actually started to speak.
No kidding. Just from that.
Yeah. It really highlights how these early environmental things might play a role and how addressing them, even gently, can sometimes shift things dramatically.
That's incredible. And the material was also clear. It's not always like a complete overnight fix, right? But often the dial moves a lot.
Exactly. Progress is key. Like that story of the nonverbal twin boys, maybe around 10 years old, on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Treatments like phosphatidylcholine pushes, which help support cell health well. They didn't suddenly make them totally talkative, but the reports where they became noticeably happier, started sleeping better, showed more connection. The dial moved.
The dial moved. I like that. So if we think about helping the body clear things out, what if optimizing that is maybe a fundamental first step towards a clearer mind?
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? Definitely something to consider. And building on that idea of internal balance, the sources also dove into something called low-dose immunotherapy, LDI.
LDI, okay. What's the idea there?
Well, LDI focuses on helping the immune system kind of calm down and find balance, especially when a child has a sudden, really noticeable change in behavior or development that seems like it might be linked to some kind of immune trigger.
Okay, so how does it work? In simple terms.
The basic idea is it helps the immune system learn to tolerate things it might be overreacting to. These could be things the body makes itself, like hormones or tiny microbes like bacteria or viruses maybe.
Okay, here's where it got really interesting for me reading the material. The example of PANDAS.
Ah, yes. Pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcus. It's a condition where a past strep infection triggers this autoimmune reaction that actually targets parts of the brain.
Right. Leading to the sudden, severe onset of things like OCD, CADX, anxiety, big mood swings. It can be absolutely devastating for families.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And the really striking finding mentioned was that using LDI with a specific mixture made from the strep bacteria itself reportedly worked in roughly 9 out of 10 cases of true PANDAS, according to one source.
Yeah.
That clear link between like a common throat infection and severe brain issues in these kids is just wow.
It's truly remarkable. And the sources indicate LDI might be helpful in other immune-related situations too. We saw examples related to, say, food allergies causing neurological symptoms, like Tourette's.
Really? Food allergies causing Tourette's?
One doctor reported success treating every case they saw that was attributed to specific food sensitivities. They used LDI to address the immune reaction to those foods, and even some cases of true bipolar I disorder that were found to be linked to food allergies in the material reportedly responded well to LDI. Okay, so could something like a past infection you didn't even know was still lingering, or maybe undetected mold, or even a food that seems totally harmless, could that really be silently messing with brain function and behavior?
It's definitely a possibility the sources suggest is worth exploring. But, it's important to remember, as they noted, root causes are complex. They vary a lot. LDI is just one tool in the toolbox.
Right. Not a magic bullet. Okay, speaking of connections the body has with the brain, let's talk about psychobiotics.
Psychobiotics, yeah. These are basically spiral kinds of probiotics. The good bacteria we hear about living in our gut. But these are specific ones that have been shown to have a direct, measurable impact on the brain. They actually communicate with the brain.
They're little messengers.
They really are. The material explains they're particularly important for how our bodies handle stress. When you think about it, you put two people in the exact same stressful situation. One might handle it okay. The other gets totally overwhelmed with anxiety. The presence and activity of certain psychobiotics in the gut can be a key difference there. They act like a kind of checkpoint that influences that stress response.
And they work with the body's main stress system, the HPA axis.
Exactly. So when stress hormones like cortisol affect the gut, these good microbes can actually help stop this cycle of inflammation that would otherwise just keep the stress response going and going. They can even help the brain shift from those faster brain waves you see with stress or anxiety towards slower, calmer wave patterns, like what you see in meditation.
Wow. And there were studies mentioned, right?
Yeah, studies mentioned in the sources seem to back this up, like researchers living in really isolated, high-stress places like the South Pole.
Yeah.
They reported big improvements in mood, stress levels, focus, even sleep when they took specific psychobiotics.
That's amazing. And there was another one about social anxiety.
Right. A group taking psychobiotics while doing these, social anxiety simulations reported their anxiety levels were cut in half compared to the group that didn't take them.
Cut in half? Just from probiotics.
Specific psychobiotics, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? How much that tiny world inside your gut can influence something as fundamental as how you feel stress or even your brain activity. Who knew?
It really changes how you think about stress management, for sure. Okay, let's shift gears a little, explore some ways to directly support and maybe even train the brain itself. One really cutting-edge area discussed was exosomes.
Exosomes. Yeah, these are described as these incredibly tiny bubbles, almost like messengers released by cells.
Okay.
They carry information instructions, proteins, genetic material, and they help speed up healing and repair processes in the body. Think of them like tiny delivery trucks carrying blueprints and building materials.
So they were first used more for, physical injuries?
Initially, yeah.
Yeah.
Tissue repair, that kind of thing. But the sources highlight their really exciting potential now for brain issues. Well, they're being explored for various neurological conditions. And specifically for autism, the material shared some really powerful anecdotes from parents, reporting significant positive changes in their kids within weeks of treatment.
What kind of changes?
Things like eating a wider variety of foods, making more eye contact, even initiating physical affection like hugs.
Wow. There was that one story, right? About a 6 or 7-year-old boy with severe autism.
Yes, that one was very touching. He'd apparently shown basically no physical affection toward his parents before. And after the treatment mentioned in the material, he started spontaneously hugging them.
Oh man, that's huge for a family.
Absolutely life-changing. And a key point emphasized in the sources is that exosomes are considered very, very safe. Like 0 reported adverse effects.
That's important, and they can cross the blood-brain barrier easily, unlike stem cells maybe.
Exactly. That's a big advantage. It makes them relatively easy to give sometimes just through an IV, and means they can actually get to the brain and have a direct effect.
Huh. Tiny bubbles with instructions that can help build new brain connections and maybe even spark emotional connection. It sounds almost like science fiction, but those examples are really compelling.
They really are. Now, moving to another way to directly influence the brain, we looked at neurofeedback. This is basically training your brain waves, often using video games.
Right. I've heard of this. It sounds kind of fun, actually.
It often is for kids, yeah. It's totally non-invasive, can be really effective for things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, sleep problems.
So how does it actually work? Like, what happens in a session?
Well, usually after an initial assessment, maybe a brain map, they put little electrodes on the child's scalp, just to read their brainwave patterns.
Okay.
Then, while the child watches a movie or plays a simple game, the screen or the sound is linked to their brain activity. So their brainwaves aren't in the pattern they're aiming for, like if they're too anxious or maybe unfocused, the screen might dim or the game might pause.
Ah, so their brain, which naturally wants the reward, right, keeping the game going, quickly learns to adjust its own activity to get the feedback back to normal.
Precisely. It's like the brain teaching itself how to get into a more optimal state. And the material shared a truly remarkable specific example of this.
Yeah.
Training alpha waves. Those are linked to a calm, relaxed state in autistic children. They reported that increasing alpha activity by just 2 or 3% led to 90% of those children starting to speak.
90%. Just by shifting brainwaves that little bit.
That's what the source indicated. It just highlights the brain's incredible plasticity, its ability to change. Using games and rewards really taps into that learning mechanism, using dopamine pathways.
Yeah.
And for kids who learn better through movement kinesthetic learners, the sources mentioned some neurofeedback approaches or even incorporating physical activities now.
Wow. What if learning wasn't just about books and classrooms, but about playing a game that actually teaches your brain to be calm and focused, that completely flips the script on how we think about learning challenges, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And on a related note, we also explored binaural beats.
Okay, binaural beats. This is sound, right? Through headphones.
Exactly. You listen to specific sounds, usually through headphones. And slightly different frequencies are played in each ear. The brain processes this difference, and it creates this kind of beat, a frequency that the brain then starts to follow or entrain to.
So the brain matches the beat.
Yeah, it starts to match its own frequency to that perceived beat. It's a pretty simple way to help guide brainwave patterns. And it seems particularly good at activating the parasympathetic nervous system.
That's the rest and digest system, right? Opposite of fight or flight.
Exactly. Shifting you out of that stress response. And it also helps support neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new connections.
So it could be helpful for just relaxing, or maybe focus.
Yeah, the material notes it can be helpful for relaxation, encouraging desired brain patterns. May be helpful for some kids with ADHD. Potentially calming for some kids with autism too, if they aren't too sensitive to sounds. That's an important caveat.
Could something as simple as listening to certain sounds actually help your brain relax or shift into a better state for learning? It's a really accessible idea, isn't it?
It really is. Worth exploring, for sure.
Okay, looking at other technologies mentioned, we saw non-invasive electrotherapy and vagus nerve stimulation.
Right. These methods use very gentle electrical signals. Often it's just electrodes clipped onto the ears. They've been studied for issues like PTSD, depression, anxiety. Seems like they help regulate key brain chemicals like dopamine, serotonin.
And the vagus nerve connection seems really key here.
Absolutely crucial. The vagus nerve is like this superhighway connecting the brain and body, plays a huge role in shifting us from stressed to calm. And while, teaching breathing and mindfulness is vital, sometimes kids, especially anxious kids, need a bit more support to actually engage that nerve effectively.
And there was that cool biofeedback device described. The one kids love.
Oh yeah, that sounded great. It's an ear clip that measures heart rate variability, HRV, which is a really good indicator of how well the vagus nerve is working.
Right.
And on a screen, the kids see this visualized as like a colorful flower or a rainbow game. As they practice calming breaths or even just naturally relax, they see the flower change color, maybe red to green.
So they're training their vagus nerve response without even really thinking about doing breathing exercises.
Exactly. It gamifies calming the nervous system. Makes a complex physiological process really tangible and visual. Seems incredibly helpful when stress or anxiety feels overwhelming.
Using tech to gently nudge the body into calm. Clever.
Very clever. And finally, under this sort of direct brain supports section, we looked at TMS and MERT.
Okay, they sound a bit more intensive. Magnetic pulses.
Yeah, they are more advanced therapies. Using magnetic pulses applied to the head, sometimes called physical therapy for the brain.
Physical therapy for the brain. How so?
Well, the idea is to use these magnetic fields to help reset or retrain brain frequencies that might be off, maybe due to injury, inflammation, or conditions like depression or autism.
And there are two types, TMS and MERT.
Right. TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, is often a more general approach. MERT, which stands for magnetic E-resonance therapy, is much more personalized.
How is it personalized?
It uses an EEG brain scan first to map the individual's specific brainwave patterns. Then they tailor the magnetic pulses precisely to help nudge those specific frequencies back towards a more normal range.
So unlike neurofeedback, where you're actively training your brain,
right,
with MERT or TMS, the magnet is doing the work on your brain while you just sit there.
Pretty much, yeah. You're passively receiving the treatment.
Could magnets really hold the key to resetting the brain's communication signals? It's a powerful idea. And non-invasive, which is definitely a plus.
Yeah, it's another fascinating area. Now, moving beyond these sort of direct brain or body system interventions, the sources also really strongly highlighted the power of creative approaches, relational connections, and broader mind-body stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes the simplest things are right there, like aromatherapy.
Absolutely. Using scents from plants, usually essential oils. Our sense of smell has this incredibly direct pathway to the limbic system in the brain.
That's the emotion center, right?
Exactly. So smelling certain things can have a really immediate impact on mood, anxiety, stress levels.
And the material mentions specific oils.
It did. Lavender and vanilla were noted for calming effects.
Yeah.
Potentially decreasing the brain's electrical signaling a bit. And vetiver was interesting mention for potentially increasing dopamine, which could help with focus. Maybe relevant for ADHD.
How do people use them? Just sniff them.
You can diffuse them, massage them into the skin, diluted usually, put them on the feet, and with very pure, high-quality oils, sometimes even a drop under the tongue can have a rapid effect.
Yeah.
The Forest shared a personal story about feeling calm almost instantly with lavender that way.
Wow. Your sense of smell is a direct line to your emotions and even your brain chemistry. Makes you think more about the sense around you, doesn't it?
It really does. And then there are therapies that just resonate so deeply with kids because they involve expression and connection. Art, music, horse therapy, play therapy.
Right. These aren't just like fun activities. They're powerful therapeutic tools, especially if a child struggles to talk about how they feel or what they've been through.
Definitely. And they actively help build new brain connections, that neuroplasticity again. Engaging in art, or pottery, for instance, stimulates the parietal lobe, which is involved in spatial awareness, body mapping, creativity.
And horse therapy. That sounds amazing.
It offers unconditional love, teaches responsibility, provides this really calming presence. It was highlighted as particularly beneficial for some children on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. And play therapy. It gives younger kids a safe space to basically act out their inner world, process experiences using the symbolic language of toys.
So healing, emotional processing, even brain development can happen through these engaging, creative, relational activities.
Absolutely. It really reinforces that fundamental human need for expression and connection.
We also saw acupuncture mentioned. That's ancient. But how does it apply to kids?
Yeah, while the idea of needles might sound scary for kids, acupuncture for children is usually quite different from adults. The goal is still regulating the body's energy flow, calming the nervous system, which can help with anxiety, depression, even OCD symptoms.
So no lying still for an hour with needles?
Not usually, no. It might involve fewer, very fine needles, or more often for kids, things like acupressure, just pressing on points, or even using a gentle laser or electrical stimulation on key points, often on the ears, which can influence the vagus nerve too.
Interesting. So tapping into these ancient energy pathways could potentially help calm a modern child's maybe overactive nervous system.
That's the principle, yeah. And it's used in various settings. It aligns with calming the body.
And finally, we touched on hypnotherapy.
Right, which is really about guiding someone into a state of deep relaxation, kind of like meditation.
Okay.
In that state, the mind is more open, and it can be a very gentle way to help process difficult things like trauma without the person having to consciously, intensely relive them.
And the course has suggested it's good for kids who might not open up easily in regular talk therapy.
Exactly. There was a story shared about a daughter who had basically learned to just tell therapists what she thought they wanted to hear. She wasn't really engaging, but hypnotherapy allowed her to access and process things she couldn't or wouldn't verbalize otherwise.
And it helps reduce triggers over time.
Yeah, this gentle processing can lessen the emotional charge of difficult memories. Often it's not about dramatic aha moments, but more subtle shifts in how the nervous system responds to things.
What if you could work through tough experiences, not by confronting them head on in a scary way, but by accessing this calm, relaxed state where your mind and body can just gently process them? That really changes the dynamic of healing trauma, doesn't it?
It really does. It offers a way to engage with difficult material, but from a place of safety within yourself.
Wow. This deep dive has certainly opened my eyes to just how many different avenues there are beyond the most common approaches to mental wellness. And, a core thread running through all the material seems to be this emphasis on looking deeper.
Absolutely. Really reiterating that idea that labels or diagnoses, ADHD, anxiety, whatever it might be, can often be seen as symptoms, like warning lights on a car's dashboard.
Right.
The real power, as these approaches suggest, lies in investigating what's causing that light to come on, finding the root cause.
And the parent's role in all this was highlighted as just central, wasn't it?
Absolutely central. The sources really emphasize that the parent, by building trust and that strong relationship, is the key healing agent. We heard that full story of Aiden, diagnosed with ADHD, who was really struggling.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Well, his mom brought him in after difficulties even in specialized school programs, and the initial focus wasn't on meds or behavior charts. It was purely on building their connection. Apparently, there was no eye contact. Initially, he'd have these rages whenever she tried to engage closely.
That sounds really tough.
Incredibly tough. They spent months just fostering that sense of trust and safety together. Only after that foundation was solid did they gradually start introducing other supportive things like sensory exercises, neurodevelopmental activities.
Like what kind of activity?
Like having him do schoolwork lying on his tummy sometimes, which can help the brain organize itself. Focusing on keeping his feet grounded, literally connected to the earth. Simple things, but foundational.
And how is he doing now?
Reportedly, thriving. Homeschooling. Now, accelerating his learning. It's such a powerful illustration that sometimes the most fundamental intervention isn't a specific therapy, but really that foundation of a safe, trusting relationship.
That's amazing. We also heard that other really compelling story, the 16-year-old girl with severe panspanda symptoms.
Oh yes, that was quite something. Things like involuntary head movements, extreme anxiety and depression rated like 10 out of 10 body aches, constant digestive problems, and standard medical treatments hadn't helped her.
So what did they find when they looked deeper?
Through that root cause investigation, they uncovered underlying factors. Chronic mold exposure in her environment, Lyme disease, and significant heavy metal toxicity, specifically arsenic, found in their well water.
Wow. All of that going on underneath.
All of it. And addressing those environmental and physiological stressors, mainly through detoxification protocols, led to a reported 75% improvement relatively quickly, and eventually full recovery.
75% improvement. That's incredible.
It completely transformed her life. And it even inspired her career path. She's now pursuing dentistry, apparently. It wasn't about just managing a PANS diagnosis. It was about identifying and clearing the physical issues that were driving those symptoms.
That's a powerful message. And there was one more quick example, the young child with wheezing and anxiety.
Right. Chronic wheezing attacks, significant anxiety. Pediatricians couldn't find a clear cause, but deeper investigation found issues with oxidative stress, basically cell damage, and a severe lack of essential nutrients.
And the fix was?
Incredibly simple, almost unbelievably so. Giving her basic antioxidants, the kind you find in fruits and vegetables, like vitamins A, C, and E, and that resolved both the wheezing and the anxiety.
Just from nutrients.
It really shows how fundamental nutrition is to our overall health, including our mental state. Your brain is literally built from the food you eat.
Yeah. And the sources listed other potential root causes too, right? Things we might overlook.
Definitely. Things like chemicals in our environment, the quality of our food or lack thereof, chronic stress, of course, and even environmental factors like electromagnetic fields, EMFs from Wi-Fi, cell towers, that kind of thing.
And it all comes back to that powerful mind-body connection, doesn't it? How your physical state, your physiology just profoundly impacts your mental state, your ability to learn, even simple things we talked about earlier.
Like posture, movement, just being outside in nature. They make a massive difference. Spending time in nature, getting sunlight, touching the earth, grounding, or forest bathing can apparently induce a state called hypermnesia, which is associated with superlearning.
Superlearning being outside. Cool.
Yeah. And conversely, constantly looking down at devices might contribute to what some are calling digital dementia, and it restricts blood flow to the brain. Even just simple movement, getting up every hour, helps produce nitric oxide, improves circulation everywhere, including the brain.
Understanding these potential root causes, these intricate connections between the physical and the mental, it really empowers you, doesn't it? To look beyond just managing symptoms for your child or even for yourself.
Could the answers really lie in unexpected places, like the air you breathe, the water you drink, or just the ground you walk on? It definitely expands our view of what influences our health and well-being.
Knowing all this also makes a strong case for advocating for change, doesn't it? Gently pushing the system maybe to look beyond just symptom management towards identifying and addressing root causes more often.
Absolutely. And of course, continuing to reduce the stigma around mental health challenges so people feel comfortable exploring all the possible paths to feeling better. There are just so many tools and perspectives available today that offer real hope and effective strategies, often by looking deeper than the surface symptoms.
Wow, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground in this deep dive. I mean, from the body's inner environment, immune balance, to directly supporting and training the brain and embracing the power of creative outlets and mind-body connections.
Yeah.
It's really clear there's so many different and frankly promising avenues to explore when we think about helping kids and really anyone thrive. Looking at the body, the brain, those intricate connections, looking at them in these newer ways.
And thinking about how profoundly our physical state, I mean, everything from our gut bugs to our nutrient levels to our environment can impact our mental and emotional well-being. Maybe final thought for everyone listening is, what simple, everyday physical factors might be influencing your state or your child's state right now? Factors you maybe haven't fully considered before.
That is a really good question to sit with, and we genuinely love to hear what you took away from this deep dive. Did any of these therapies or concepts surprise you? Does this idea of exploring root causes resonate with your experience? Please share your thoughts and questions with us.